Oops. Welcome everyone to the Sovereign Way. My name is Elizabeth, and for this hour or so we're going to spend together, we're talking about stewardship. Now we're in a conversation about wealth, about being in true sovereign relation with wealth, and in the spirit of good stewardship, I'm going to spend a little bit of time addressing a very important question that I was invited into this last week. And the question was, what is the topic of wealth doing in a spiritual conversation? Now, there are on this planet at least 8 billion reasons to talk about the responsibility of being sovereign in relation to provision, stewardship, and appropriate use of wealth. But there are 2 reasons in particular that I'm most interested in and that I'm authorized to teach on within the contextual container of how to be sovereign in true relation with a fast changing world. A world that is in the threshold of a transformation irrevocable and unrecognizable. How do we remain sovereign in that period of time? And the first of the 2 questions, or the 2 reasons that I'm most interested in when it comes to wealth, the first is this. With the inrush of spiritual energy during this phase of human evolution, old systems and hard structures are dissolving. The traditional economic system, as we know it, as we have known it, is in crisis, as everything is rapidly brought to the surface and equalized. We are convicted at all levels of misappropriating the quality of desire and allowing our sacral energy to funnel into desire for sensory pleasure, material comfort, desire for control, desire for acquisition, and accumulation of stuff, visual aids of our abundance. And this greed has dominated human thinking as the keynote of modern civilization, an octopus slowly strangling human life and enterprise and decency, a heavy millstone chained to the heart as children are dying from hunger because of climate change, because of greed. Practically all of the world's problems and differences belch out of that same cardinal sin, the inversion of the root, sacral, and solar energies. But the planet's energy is shifting. The root is healing as we receive more of God's love and we become more personally grounded in our trust that we are held safely and in our place in the world. The divine feminine is infusing into those steadfast structures placed by the divine masculine through the rise of the patriarchy. And as a result of this vibrational alchemy, we are already seeing that traditional systems of exchange are rapidly transforming. And no, cryptocurrency is not the final answer either, but one evolution toward a universal method of righteous exchange in a reciprocal, collaborative, and benevolent society. That is what we are praying into, and that is where we are moving into. And as we come into deeper understanding of the interrelation of all parts of life, this naturally brings about a more reciprocal interplay in the field of economics. The ways that we move in exchange are changing. And when traditional wealth systems crumble and are reinvented in real time, as a spiritual leader, you need to be able to hold your sovereign poise in relation to wealth as you know it, so you can get on with the job that you're called to do. Are you free to jump at the Lord's command? Or are you tangled up in matters that don't matter? Here's a quick background story. So there was a time when my husband and I and our children had just been saved from homelessness, and we had invested 7 months into trying to build our own system of provision, if you like. And I was on the path to priesthood within the Episcopal Church, and my husband was applying for a job as a camp director at an Episcopal retreat camp. And we made it all the way to the very end. This was going to be the perfect situation because they were going to provide a house for us. They were going to provide space. Never again would we be homeless. It was perfect. I could just sit and pray and meditate and study and write sovereign. It was absolutely perfect. And we invested every single egg into that basket because we said, no plan B. If you want to manifest the thing, go all in. And we went all in, baby. And we went all the way to the very end. And my husband interviewed with the bishop, and they wined us and dined us. And then they were going to give us the call. They were going to say, it's done. And 3 days before we needed to be out of the house we were leasing, they called and said, we're calling off the search. No one's getting hired. We didn't know why. They didn't know why. They're just pulling the search. Now, of course, fast forward a few months, we discovered, and nobody knew that this would happen, but COVID showed up and closed down all the retreat centers in the whole universe. But we didn't know that, and neither did they. But they did have the sovereignty to act on the Lord's command, even though it went against reason. Now, we were then in purgatory, because now we're at that point where you can either choose to move into what's greening, or you can identify with everything that's falling apart. Do you go into expectation, or do you go into anxiety? Where's your mastery? How poised are you in relation to what is happening, that you can make a choice according to your core values? So instead of identifying with everything that was falling apart, Matt and I looked at what was greening, and what was greening was a woman who had been following me on Instagram, who lived out in the wild in the back end of Colorado in a yurt on a piece of raw land, said, you could come here and pitch a tent and you could help us prepare for the winter. And so we moved in that direction. That's what we did. We gave up everything that we had been building, and we went out and lived in a tent in the wild. If God said to you, go to the forest in Colorado and live in a tent for an unforeseeable length of time, and go with nothing, with no job, with no savings, only my promise. Oh, and bring your little children with you. Yes, there are lions in the woods there, and bears, and coyote. And yes, you could do any number of more sensible things by the world's reasoning, but this is what I'm asking you to do. Go now. Would you go? Or would you say, well, no, I have to go to work on Monday. I'm busy whizzing along in an unconscious system of constant exchange out here in a particularized world. This is why we need to have the conversation about how you use your authority in Christ to ensure your engagement with the only provision that will never change. I am not saying you need to leave your life, but if God asked you to, could you? And if you're now saying, yes, I could, yes, I will, Lord, if you're saying yes now, or you'd like to say yes, then we need to talk about manna. Because if you're not intimately familiar with the essence of spiritual manna, and you've misplaced the idea of wealth into any external currency, then you are acutely vulnerable, because the world is changing. And that's why we talk about the magic of duck economics, the ability to manifest extraordinary developments for the kingdom with very little cash in your coffers. And we need only spend a moment in conversation here in the oasis to hear the incredible ways that God is moving through the anointed. From Uganda to Nigeria to UK to Sweden to Canada and all across the USA, testimonies right here in our room showing that the more we practice holding our poise in relation to what wealth is and how it converts, the greater our ability to participate in the great plan. If God has asked you to build a village, do you build it? Or do you start complaining about your limited resources? If God asks you to leave one career and pour into a new mission field, do you, or do you wait until you've built up enough of a nest egg to ensure your pension and your kids and your material estate are sensibly insured? The outrageous courage and obedience and grace that you guys here in the Oasis have shown this year, and all the transformations that you've seen and the miracles that we prayed for together, it shows that it does matter to the disciple to have this conversation. So the first and most important reason to be talking about wealth is that the economic system as we know it is vanishing, and you need to be prepared in mind, energy, and body to participate in a variety of new ways as you practice relating to the essence of wealth as opposed to the structure. And there is mastery involved in this, which is why we must practice. The second reason we're talking about wealth, this is more personal and more individual, which is that many of us light workers and spiritual leaders are trained across periods of extreme poverty. It's very common that when we're called into discipleship that we are dematerialized, sometimes several times, as we come to truly discover that His grace is sufficient. And we learn to manifest what we actually need when we actually need it. And that's not passive, by the way. We're not sitting around waiting for God to make it rain, but our loving inquiry, what is it? That is how we authorize the adamantine particles of creation to rearrange themselves and become the resource we need. So the primary outcome of these training periods through poverty is that we discover that God's grace is truly sufficient, and we embody such depth of trust that provision transcends all systems and environments, and we become free to move. But a secondary and less desirable outcome of being trained through extreme poverty is that these wanderings in the desert can often leave trauma imprints. When our business fails, or we lose our home, or everything we build up burns to the ground, then the agony of that loss leaves deep trenches in our inner conversations about worthiness. Am I actually allowed to have anything? Am I actually allowed to create anything? And the tension in this trauma that's in our minds and in our vibrations and in our bodies, the tension in this can make us really resistant to receiving the provision that we need to get the job done. So the conversation about mana and its role and function in your mission as a spiritual leader is certainly important, because sovereignty requires you to be free to drop everything and follow Him. So last week, we spoke about how do you actually convert mana? And we saw that the root of the word mana comes from Hebrew manhu, which is a question, what is it? So mana is, what is it? And then we went a little bit beyond ask, believe, receive mechanics, and we looked at 3 steps of true sovereignty. First, knowing that source, spirit, and substance are indivisibly in this moment, and therefore the elusive mana is here now. So we unlock it with the humble and submitted question, what is it? And second, we then hold a poised non-attachment to what it must be, and we allow creative malleability to form the substance of wealth as it is to be known in this situation. Perhaps it's $100 bill, perhaps it's a carton of 12 fresh duck eggs, perhaps it's a friend in need. And then third, the freedom and courage to lean into the invitation, to say yes to what emerges, even if it looks like leaving your job or moving to the other side of the planet or burning down your creation. If God asks you to transcend a vibrational reality, you need the mental and vibrational discipline to obey. So we've covered the first consideration in mana, which is how do we convert mana into a usable resource? And those are the 3 steps that we talked about. So now we need to talk about proper stewardship, which is how you corral energy and allow the magnetism to build. Now, at each level of consciousness, you can apply the same metaphysical principles for stewardship and magnetism. And to my friends in the Oasis, I invite you to meditate on Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 to 30. Someone writing that down? Yeah, good. This is the parable of the talents. So meditate on the parable of the talents, and tomorrow in group we'll cover some energy techniques on stewardship and magnetism. But first of all, this is for everybody. Yes, you got it. Yeah, that's it. This is for everybody. Limitations are not limitations if you have the right limitations. Yes? This is something Steph was just talking about. You know you're an infinite spiritual co-creative essence, but righteous structure is important to get anything done here in our 4 dimensions of space and time, as we're delightfully locked in process reality. So as an adventurer in the spiritual quest, you can get a long way with, I'm a floaty dandelion seed in the great cosmic breath of universal Mother, Father, Spirit, free to be and free to see. But as a floaty seed, all your potential is locked. It's locked in the casing until you ground and take root. Then your potential can be realized. So in your descent into the form of your life, you finally become a steward for unfolding life force. No longer one of the sand particles in the wind, but the wind. And as the wind, you have the creative authority to form a righteous structure for mana to actualize within and through. And you will see the seed of potential become form. So now you have graduated from the floaty dandelion seed, who's free to be and free to see, and free to go anywhere. And now you have graduated from that and you have unlocked the potential. And you are allowed now to steward the becoming, the unfolding of that creative life force. So to descend into your life, to really merge with your core values and allow that to be the seed bed from which your mana grows. Here's a lovely bit from Ecclesiastes. Everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them, and to accept his lot and rejoice in his toil. This is the gift of God. That's Ecclesiastes 5:19. So your core values are the indicators of where you place your limitations. So know your core values. Return often to what matters most to you. And this is how you will know what fit for purpose looks like in your universe. So let's say, for example, that your family life matters more to you than your social status. If you then spend your time and money advancing your social status instead of deepening your family bond, then you're not stewarding your wealth well. You're investing it in an alternative reality, and you will not feel fulfilled because you're trying to convert your wealth into something you can't grab. Now, whoever you are, Fundamental to your core values is your current mission, your assignment, your purpose, your vocation, the season that you are in, the thing that you are called to do, your prime directive in this moment. Are you an activist, a teacher, a healer, a humanitarian, a disruptive catalyst, a peace bringer, a builder, an architect, a mechanic, a cultivator, harvester? If your job is to heal the wounded, then it's a total waste of your wealth to spend it tearing down the patriarchal hierarchy, even if it is a noble cause. And if your job is to tear down the patriarchal hierarchy, then it's a waste of your energy to spend your life trying to heal all the wounded. You are not to feel bad about not investing in areas where you are not called to go. You are free to call all your energy back to you and to pour it into the limitations of your core values. Now it's time for us to create a distinction so that we can more easily discern. Here's a distinction. This is to help us discern what the mana is that we are to steward and what are the areas we're not called to go. Let's listen to this distinction. And this is to my friends in the Oasis. I invite you to read the book of Ecclesiastes and we'll unwrap it tomorrow. Now, Ecclesiastes is a powerful teaching. And I'm not a biblical scholar at all, but I'm just someone who really enjoys the magic of that living word. And Ecclesiastes is famous for its summary. Hevel, hevel, everything is hevel. Now, most English Bibles translate hevel to meaningless. So this famous little bit sounds like, meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is utterly meaningless. And this is perhaps a good little ditty to help us detach from the idea that anything substantive has any innate meaning other than what we place in it. But yet, this doesn't quite capture the heart of the teaching, because hevel actually translates more correctly to vapor or smoke. So let's listen to it again. Vapor, vapor, says the teacher. Utterly vapor. Everything is utterly vapor. Everything manifest is fleeting and temporary, for that all of life, like smoke, appears solid until you try to grab onto it and you discover that nothing is there. The adamantine particles of creation are subject to the movement of spirit, and therefore everything is utterly vapor. You can be enjoying the delicious beauty and goodness in one moment, and then in the next moment, all things fall apart. So chasing the manifest expression of wealth is like chasing the wind, because as you have discovered, all things manifest are merely spirit expressed as substance, as ephemeral as the Sahara sand dunes undulating in the wind of God's breath. So what can you do then if everything is an ephemeral vapor and all the effort that you put into converting mana, digging wells and building bridges is utterly meaningless? What can you do? You have to learn to weave the wind and braid the smoke. So we have a distinction. We have mana, a wealth that flourishes everything it touches, rippling out to the edges of the universe and returning hundredfold, for it is a part of God's essence, which is always becoming. And then we have hevel, which is a wealth that comes and goes without leaving any legacy impact. This too is meaningless and fleeting. This is the wealth that you waste in your unconscious and automatic operations of daily factory living. This is part of the world's structure, and all structure changes shape, like vapor or smoke. So if you want to experience true sovereign wealth out here in the real world, there needs to be an enriched and thoroughly wealthy diamond core. When the I is good, surely the whole body is good. So you build up a storehouse of your capacity to hold and steward through goodness, through righteous service and grateful love for what is. In your judgment, there is no wealth. In your criticism and complaining, there is no wealth. In your impatience, there is no wealth, because impatience is literally a spell creating it is not here now. Mana says, what is it? And your impatience says, it's not here now. But as Alan taught us in the Oasis last week, in gentle, simple appreciation for what God has already done and who you have already become, there is wealth abundantly. In your assurance that creation works from consciousness to energy to form, you will see your needs met and your work blossom moment to moment in the way that it is. What is it? Look and see. What's greening in your life? What is becoming? What is the invitation? Now, let's say you are sovereign. Let's say you are abundantly worthy. You know you are abundantly worthy, more importantly, because everybody is abundantly worthy. But if you know you are abundantly worthy and you're getting the hang of remembering that you're never actually in lack, and you frequently see provision manifest in some way or another, right? So let's say that you're now sovereign in wealth and you are able to receive the blessings that the Lord bestows upon you. Now let's graduate from the basics and move into stewardship. Because you can be a master manifester of mana, but unless you are a good steward, all energy becomes fleeting, becomes hevel, in and out. Because adamantine particles are not magnetized to something that isn't there. Basic metaphysics. So for legacy impact, stewardship matters, right? We talked about we're no longer a floaty seed. Someone mentioned that in the Oasis, no longer a floaty seed. Now I've unlocked my authority to be a steward. So stewardship matters if I'm actually going to unfold that potential. And when it comes to stewardship, the key words are fit for purpose. The thing you are stewarding must be fit for purpose. Let's pretend you're a sea captain. And the admiral of a mighty, mighty fleet puts you in charge of the flagship. And he commands to you, he says, steward this ship well, captain. And you say, yes, sir, I will, with a smart salute. And you take the ship and you think, how will I steward this for generations to come? And you donate it to the British Museum for all to view. The admiral is not pleased. That's not what the ship was for. The whole fleet is compromised. But sir, I'm stewarding the ship. No, it's not fit for purpose. So when you're in the possession of wealth, whether it is charisma, intelligence, knowledge, eloquence, money, time, physical fitness, connections, community, when you have been bestowed something special and precious, the appropriate use of that wealth is fundamental to your stewardship. You've been asking for a relationship full of love and tenderness. Are you tending to that? You've been asking for a vocation that lets you use your higher spiritual gifts. Are you honoring that? And wrapped up in appropriate use are respect, integrity, and workability. So there's some of the things we talked about in the Oasis already. Respect, integrity, and workability. Respect for the spirit and substance of mana, and respect for the ordained authority that you have been given to wield it in the way that you're anointed for. And respect for the dynamic nature of creation and the movement needed to sustain spiritual balance in all things, including your wealth. Respect for the body of Christ, which forms not only the mana you're participating with, but also everyone you're here to serve. Glory to the One. And integrity means all working parts are in order and in their right place. Integrity doesn't mean perfection, for that too is hevel. But it means that you have completed the things that needed completion and you are tending to the things that need tending to in an honest and open way. And workability in 3D shows respect and integrity in relation to the shared infrastructure that you're participating in. If the Lord is showing you that the only way you're going to make money in this season is by selling books, and your whole spiritual creativity is moving towards healing others, then it is for you to find the way to merge these things so that the essence you are stewarding finds a structure that's fit for purpose. Mother Teresa said, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. So stewardship begins right at the very beginning, right at your core values. What am I really doing here? Am I pouring my energy into my core values and the heart of my life? Now, I felt crippled earlier this year, and I know many of you did too. We talked about this extensively. It was a really tricky threshold. I felt like I'd lost everything. I felt like everything that I had worked so passionately for and believed in with all my heart, it seemed like it was crumbling to bits again. And I kept trying to rationalize it. I kept trying to rationalize it with a little bit of Ecclesiastes. Well, we can't be too attached to anything. Everything is meaningless. I need to be totally fine with everything dissolving. It's just temporary after all, and my soul goes on forever, blah, 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 blah. But the little girl inside me was mourning. The little girl inside me was really sad. Like, really, Lord? Can it really be true that I was deluded this whole time, that I felt so aligned with you? Can it really be true that my heart's work was just a stepping stone to be discarded on the way? The thing that I was creating, did it really mean nothing to you? Do I really have to lose it all again to prove my love for you? Slow down, he said, and take a walk with me. And in his gentle and friendly way, he showed me that I was wasting so much precious mana trying to create something that God was already creating through me. I was right about one thing. I am in my calling. He really does want me to do this work, but not a lot of it has to be done today. He showed me where I've been neglecting my children. My youngest daughter is sneezing and I haven't changed the filters. He showed me where I was neglecting my home. I actually had to use a trowel to clean behind the oven. My husband worked all night for our family and I haven't said thank you yet. God gifted me with a voice and I let myself get a throat cold because I was too busy to take care of my immune system, because I was too busy building something worthy of God. That's not good stewardship. You are given a gift, an energy field, a vision, a pulse of vital life force, the in and out breath. Where? What are you spending it on? Arguing on social media? controlling other people's perceptions of you, busying about, moving bits and bobs and bites of creation hither and thither, watching the numbers go up and down, jeering in the stands of life? And how much time are you actually spending weaving his mana into our shared body in the sovereign way that you were uniquely appointed for? How much are you wasting on Hevel? And now when God showed me this, I dropped everything and I came home to my core values, to what matters most. And so everything changed this year. I've taken no new private clients, which means no income. I've spent much more time in the garden and with my children, reading and cleaning and being with my man. And yes, okay, I hear I will spend more time conditioning the body. But I pushed back a few times, suddenly triggered when the low balance alert came in from the bank, and then all of a sudden brand, visibility, algorithm, grow the ministry, give a message. But because I have a covenant with a savior, those things don't prosper for long. They fall apart, thankfully, and I don't go off in the wrong direction for very long. His grace prevents Hevel from building up in my life, and my mastery in him lets me stop, remember, forgive, and course correct. So let me summarize the series so far. Last week, number 1, how to convert mana. Be intimate with the essence of true provision. Know it is present. Allow it to form and move in the direction of the invitation, even if it triggers a little resistance. And number 2, today, steward your energy according to your core values. Know what matters most to you and focus your life force there. Bring your wealth there. Next week, to build on what we've done, to take this momentum into an ontological benefit, actually practice. What we're going to do next week is we're going to talk about opulence. We're going to talk about the vibration and really get into the sensuality, the feeling aspect of what this is, so that we can even better navigate the difference between Hevel and mana, and so that we can become better stewards of the heralding of what is unfolding and becoming. So thank you everybody for listening in today. If you're watching this live on YouTube or on Facebook, please give us a heart, like, comment, subscribe. Help build the wealth in these teachings. Help build the flow of momentum here, and engage with us and tell us that you're here. And we'll also come out and meet you, greet you. And if you're here in the Oasis, hold on. We're going to close down the live stream now, and we're going to open the table. And we're going to talk about what we discovered. Thank you everyone for watching.